أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي اللهم طهر قلبي من النفاق وعملي من الرياء ولساني من الكذب وعيني من الخيانة فإنك تعلم خائنة الأعين وما تخفي الصدور آمين يا رب العالمين. We'll continue with the study of Seerah of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And today, inshallah, we'll go through the second part of the episode of migration of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam along with Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. And if you remember last time, we went through how Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made a plan, and that was a meticulous plan basically, along with Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. And they both came while the Quraysh were trying to na'udhu billah kill Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He left in the night along with Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Then they reached the cave of Thawr, which is towards the south of Mecca. And then they stayed there for 3 nights and 3 days. And during this time, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made sure that he was getting the news of Quraysh as well. And we know that Quraysh, at one point, they reached the cave as well. And subhanAllah, this was a miracle from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they could not see Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. So after 3 days passed, then they moved on. And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu had already hired a guide, and his name was Abdullah bin Urayqat. Abdullah bin Urayqat, he was from the tribe of Ad-Day. He was not a believer, he was not a mu'min, but he was a trusted person, and he knew his job, so he was an expert guide. So he came on after the 3rd day, along with the mounts, along with the camels that Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu had prepared. And he also brought the news that the efforts of Quraysh to find Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and to capture him, they had kind of slowed down, they had slackened. And of course, as we said before, this was the wisdom of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that instead of going towards the north, he went towards the south. And he decided to stay in the cave for 3 nights as well, so that the Quraysh will try to find him in the first 2 or 3 days, and then they will slow down as well. So Amir bin Fuhaira was present as well. As we know, he was the person who used to look after the flock of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Amir bin Fuhaira radiallahu anhu. So Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam took his camel, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was with him as well, and they all departed along with Abdullah bin Urayqat. And they came out of the cave and they started heading in the direction of west towards the coast actually, and then they turned towards the north. And this happened in the month of Rabi'ul Awwal. So as we know that Prophet ﷺ left his house towards the end of Safar. So they left the cave, and this was the month of Rabi'ul Awwal, and according to Al-Rahiq al-Makhtoom, this was September 622 AD. And on their way to Medina, we only have a few incidents which have been recorded by books of Seerah, and inshallah we'll go through them. It is mentioned that on one particular day, they could not find any shelter from the scorching sun. So one can imagine that going and walking in the hot sun in desert, and when there is no shade as well, because they were going through a different route. So Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu took a glance and found a little shade along a rock. So he went there, he cleaned the place, and he spread the mantle for Prophet ﷺ to lie down. And then he went off in search of food, mainly to find something. And he found a shepherd, a boy basically, was looking after his flock, and he was in search of some shade as well. So Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu asked him for some milk, and he got the milk and he brought it to Prophet ﷺ, and Prophet ﷺ quenched his thirst. It is also mentioned that when somebody met Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and asked about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they did not know Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so they asked him that who this person was. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu would reply that he is my guide. So subhanAllah, this shows the wisdom of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu as well, that he is not giving the identity of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he's telling the truth as well, that he is my guide. So the person would think that this particular person is guiding Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu to his destination, and of course Prophet ﷺ was guiding him towards truth, towards success, towards Jannah. So this was the meaning when Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said that this person is my guide, he is guiding me towards the path. There's another incident which is more famous, I would say, and I think most people know this incident, and this is the famous incident of Suraqa bin Malik. Suraqa bin Malik bin Ju'sham. So when the news of Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu leaving Makkah spread to other tribes, Quraysh announced that they will give 100 camels to anybody who will capture them, uh, living or dead. So of course, many people in that greed, they would try and go in search of the Prophet ﷺ, and among those people, Suraqa was one. So Suraqa ibn Malik, he was from the tribe of Mudlaj, Banu Mudlaj, and he was one of the chiefs of the tribe as well. And his story has been narrated in first person. He basically narrates the story himself. And he says that the messengers of Quraysh came to us. So this means that Quraysh had sent people to different tribes to tell them that they wanted to capture Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr, and that they would give them a prize of 100 camels. So he says that the messengers of Quraysh came to us and they offered a reward of 100 camels for anyone who caught Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu dead or alive. So Suraqa says that while I was sitting with the people, a tribesman came. So another person came and he said, "O Suraqa, I have just seen shades of darkness along the seaside." So from distance he could see somebody traveling. And he said that, "I think they are Muhammad and his companion." Now Suraqa had already got the news that the Quraysh were willing to give 100 camels to somebody who would capture them. So he did not want that person to go in pursuit of Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr. So therefore he just made up and he said, "Well, indeed these are not those that you are thinking about. They are such and such people." So he just made it up that these are not the people, that they are not Prophet ﷺ and his companions, it's somebody else, because he did not want that man to go in search of Prophet ﷺ. So he stayed in the company for a little while, and then after a while he silently got up, he went back to his house, and to make sure that nobody would think that he is going after Prophet ﷺ, he asked his female servant to get the horse ready. So she took the horse and she went outside somewhere to wait for Suraqa to come. So Suraqa got ready, he took his spear and he kept his spear down. He said that I was just dragging the spear on the ground, and then he got onto his horse and he basically spurred his horse in that direction that the man had mentioned. And then he says that when I almost reached them, I mean when I got close to them, my horse stumbled and I fell off my horse. So when this happened, then Suraqa thought that maybe there was something not right. So he wanted to find out whether he should do what he wanted to do, meaning he should harm the Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr or not. So he said that I wanted to use my Aslam. Aslam is when they throw the arrows and just pick one arrow up randomly, and this will tell them whether they should do something or they should not. So he tried that and he said that the answer which I got was that I did not like, meaning it came back saying that you should not harm them. Anyhow, because of the greed that he had of 100 camels, he decided to mount his horse again and he went in their direction again, until he reached so close that he could hear the Prophet ﷺ recite the Quran. And Prophet ﷺ was busy in his recitation and he was not looking anywhere. On the other hand, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was trying to look in all the directions because he was worried about the safety of Prophet ﷺ. And when Suraqa came close, the front two legs of his horse, they sank into the sand. And again he fell off his horse. And he says that I got up, I took the legs of the horse out, and when the dust which was basically on the legs of the horse, it basically went up like a shining smoke. And he used his Aslam again. So he again asked them whether he should go in pursuit of Prophet ﷺ or not. And again he got the same answer that he should not. So at this point he realized that Prophet ﷺ was being helped by a divine help, meaning he was being helped by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that we should stop. And he also felt scared as well. So at one point he was there to hurt the Prophet ﷺ, and now he is worried about his own safety. So he called out from a distance and shouted, and he basically asked for aman, he basically asked for protection. So Prophet ﷺ stopped Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu stopped as well, and he came close to them. And when he came close to them, and he says that when I had been prevented from harming them before, meaning when I fell off my horse twice, I knew that the Prophet ﷺ and his affair will be victorious. So he understood that Prophet ﷺ was being helped by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why he was unable to harm them. So he said to the Prophet ﷺ that your people have placed a reward over you. So now he's trying to give them the news that I've brought this news for you that Quraysh, they have placed a reward of 100 camels. And then he informed that what people wanted to do with them, meaning that the people wanted to capture them and take them back to Quraysh, and he also offered them his belongings as well. So now he's trying to show that he is kind of helping them. So Prophet ﷺ basically did not take anything from him, but he was still worried. So he said that he wanted something in writing, that he will be given protection. And this shows that he could see that Prophet ﷺ one day will be victorious. So maybe he wanted something in writing from Prophet ﷺ that the time when the time comes that Prophet ﷺ is victorious in Arabia, then he will have the Aman as well. So Prophet ﷺ asked Amir bin Fuhaira to write on a scroll. And this was a piece of leather actually. And then they resumed their journey. There's another version in which Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he reports that. He says that when we emigrated towards Medina, the Makkans were in pursuit of us. So they were trying to catch us, and no one caught up with us except Suraqa bin Malik. So he was the one who came close, and I said to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that this one has caught up with us. And Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam kept calm, and he said the same thing what he had said when he was in the cave, La tahzan inna Allah ma'ana. That don't be scared, don't be afraid, verily Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with us. Ibn Abdul Barr has also related the same story, and it mentions also that Prophet ﷺ said to Suraqa bin Malik that how shall it be with you when you wear the bracelets of Kisra? So Prophet ﷺ is basically telling him that a time will come that you will be wearing the bracelets of Kisra. Now this is a time when Prophet ﷺ himself is emigrating to Medina, and Muslims are just trying to find a place to live somewhere in peace. And Kisra is the king of one of the superpowers of the time, and Prophet ﷺ is basically telling him that a time will come that you will be wearing the bracelets, meaning that we will defeat them and Islam will be victorious. Now many years later we know that during the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, Muslims conquered the land of Persia, and in the war booty they also got the two bracelets of Kisra along with his crown and the belt as well, and this was brought to Umar radiallahu anhu in Medina. And Umar radiallahu anhu remembered the saying of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so he immediately sent for Suraqa. So when Suraqa came, Umar radiallahu anhu basically made him wear those two bracelets. And it is mentioned that Suraqa was a hirsute, meaning he had a lot of hair on his arms. So Umar radiallahu anhu said to him that he should raise his arms. So he was raising his arms. So Umar radiallahu anhu said, Allahu Akbar. All praise to Allah who has removed these bracelets from Kisra ibn Hurmuz, the one who used to say, I am the Lord of mankind, and has made Suraqa ibn Malik, a Bedouin from Banu Mudlij, put them on. Subhanallah. So Umar radiallahu anhu is basically telling the people, he's basically telling the people the prophecy that Prophet ﷺ had made that came true. So Umar radiallahu anhu raised his voice and he asked Suraqa to climb a riding animal, and then he made him parade through the streets of Medina with the two bracelets that he was wearing. There's another famous incident which happened, and that is the encounter with the Ma'bad. And this is again one of the incidents which has been mentioned by different books. Ma'bad was one of the old ladies. She was from Banu Khuza'a, and her name is Atika bint Ka'ab al-Khuza'iyya. And the tribe of Khuza'a, they were in a place called Qudayd. So in Qudayd, and this story has been mentioned in different books. Ibn Kathir has mentioned as well that this is well known. The incident of Ma'bad is well known, and it has been narrated by Khalid ibn Khunais. He was one of the companions of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the story goes on that when Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was accompanying Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Amir bin Fuhaira and Abdullah bin Urayqat, they came across Ma'bad. So she was sitting outside her tent, um, and she was an old lady. Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, of course, they must have been hungry because it's a long journey actually, as we know that it took at least 7 or 8 days for them to travel from Mecca to Medina. So they asked for some meat or dates which they could buy from her, but she had nothing. And of course, this was a time that they were going through drought as well. So there was basically they had nothing at the time. So Prophet ﷺ saw a sheep on one side, and this was a very weak sheep actually. So Prophet ﷺ said to Ma'bad, "What about this sheep?" So Ma'bad said that it's a weak sheep, meaning that this sheep is not giving any milk, so it's useless basically for them. So Prophet ﷺ asked, "Do you give me permission to milk it?" So of course she would have become a little bit amazed as well that this sheep has never given milk for such a long time, and this man is saying that I want to milk this sheep. So she said, "Yes, may my mother and father be sacrificed for you." Certainly, means you can try that. So Prophet ﷺ made dua, and he passed his hand over its udder. He said Bismillah, and it is mentioned that he invoked for Ma'bad. So he made dua for Ma'bad to be blessed in her sheep. The sheep opened its legs as if it was ready to be milked. So Prophet ﷺ then, and it said that the milk started flowing. So Prophet ﷺ asked for a container and he milked the sheep. And the container was full, and it was a big container. And then he gave it to Ma'bad to drink. So she drank milk, and then it went round and everybody else drank. And then Prophet ﷺ drank with the same container as well. And then Prophet ﷺ milked the sheep again once more. And then they gave the container back to Ma'bad along with the sheep, and then they left. So this incident, probably the time that they would have spent, maybe an hour or 2 hours maximum, you can say, not longer than that. So when they left, Abu Ma'bad came, so the husband of Ma'bad, so he came back. And when he saw the milk in a container, he was amazed. Of course, he would have been shocked that how is it possible that this sheep has been milked. So he said that the sheep is far from pasture land. There's nothing to graze. And it has not given birth as well. So how is it possible that there's milk in the container? So Ma'bad said, "No, by Allah, you are right." Meaning what you're saying is right. But a blessed man passed by us. And such was his situation. So she tried to describe the man. So when Abu Ma'bad heard, he said, "Oh Ma'bad, describe him to me. Tell me how this man was actually. What did he look like? What was his manners?" So then she gave the following description. And we have been through this description before, but inshallah we'll just go through it quickly again. We went through this description when we started the lessons of Seerah. And this description, which is given by Ma'bad, is beautiful, and it's been given by different books of Seerah as well. And the amazing thing about this is that this description is given by somebody who has seen Prophet ﷺ for the first time. She has never seen Prophet ﷺ before. She has just heard from, maybe she must have heard from Abu Ma'bad, from his husband, that there's a person which Quraysh want to capture. That's all basically. She didn't know anything else. Or maybe she didn't even know that as well. But she has met for the first time, and she's not a believer at the time. She didn't believe in Prophet ﷺ. But the description that she has given is beautiful. And I will just read it. It says, "I saw a man who was patently handsome. I saw a man who was patently handsome and whose face was radiant." SubhanAllah. He had good manners. He was not skinny or emaciated, and overall he can be described as handsome. So basically she is saying that his face was handsome as well, and when you look at his body, it was perfectly balanced as well. That he is not very skinny, he is a handsome man. And his eyes were da'aj. The word that she used is da'aj, and this has been translated that da'aj means the black part of the eye was extremely black and the white part was extremely white. And his eyelashes were long. And that his voice was not strident, meaning it wasn't forceful or noisy. His neck was long and his beard was thick. His hair of eyebrows were thin and long, and both eyebrows met in the middle. According to other Sahaba who had been with the Prophet ﷺ for long, young Sahaba, they said that there was a little bit of gap between the two eyebrows. So again, this shows that she was observing the Prophet ﷺ so closely, that she is describing each and everything, the eyelashes of the Prophet ﷺ and how he looked, and his eyes and his eyebrows, everything, and the way he spoke. If he remained silent, there was a sense of dignity about him. So if he's not speaking, he's a dignified person. And if he spoke, he would be covered by beauty and radiance. Now, this, when you read it in Arabic, this is beautiful actually, but this is just a rough, you can say, translation. But this is still beautiful, the way she is describing a person that she has met for the first time, maybe for just a couple of hours. From a distance, he is the most handsome and magnificent of people. So when he is coming from a distance, he is handsome and magnificent, and from up close, he is the sweetest and the best of people. And this is exactly what Ali radiallahu anhu said, that anybody who came to know Prophet ﷺ, he would love the Prophet ﷺ. So when he saw them, he would be admired, but if they came to know Prophet ﷺ, they would love them. So this is exactly what she is saying. His speech is sweet and positively true. He speaks moderately, neither too much nor too little. He is of medium height, neither too tall, nor is he short so as to be belittled or mocked by anybody. Subhanallah. He was the most radiant of the three in appearance and the most esteemed as well. So she is comparing Prophet ﷺ with the other companions who are with the Prophet ﷺ, that he is the one who is most radiant in his appearance and most esteemed as well. And then she talks about the companions, meaning how did they behave? He had companions who surrounded him. If he spoke, they listened attentively. Subhanallah. This is again what she is describing. We know that when Prophet ﷺ used to say something, the Sahaba used to sit very quietly, and it is mentioned as if they had birds on their heads, that even if they will move head, the bird will fly away. So she is saying the same thing, that if he spoke, they listened attentively. And if he commanded, they hurried to execute his command. And the last two things which he said, they are beautiful actually. I mean, this is amazing what she is saying. He is such that people should serve him and gather around him. Subhanallah. I mean, she is meeting the Prophet ﷺ for the first time, and she is giving her opinion that he is such a man that people should serve him and they should gather around him. He does not frown, and he is certainly not in the least linked to ignorance. So he is a knowledgeable man. He is not ignorant. He doesn't frown. He is a sweet person, and he is such a man that people should come around him and they should serve him. Subhanallah. And this is the quality which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described in the Quran, that Allah gave this quality to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that's why people are around him. As Allah said in Surah Al Imran, فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُمْ وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. And it is by the mercy of Allah that you deal with them gently. لِنْتَ لَهُمْ وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. And had you been severe and harsh-hearted, they would have broken away from you. So meaning you are a soft-hearted, kind and gentleman. And this is a quality which has been given to you by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Ma'bad is saying the same thing, that this is a person that people should come around him, they should basically listen to him, follow him, and they should serve him. So this is a beautiful description which was given by somebody who did not know Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam beforehand. When Abu Ma'bad heard all this, he said, by Allah, he is the companion of the Quraysh whose affair has been mentioned to us. So it means they also knew that Quraysh were after somebody. And he was so impressed, he said that I have indeed resolved to become his companion, and I will indeed achieve that goal if I find a way to do so. Meaning I will become his companion, I will try my best to do so. And he was so impressed that he recited some verses in the poetry. So he basically said poetry himself. And in his verses, he first thanks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah gave them the opportunity to host Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was like their guest. And then he talks about the pleasure, the happiness that would settle in the heart of the companions, whosoever he was, being the companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because of his company. And it ends with the invitation to all mankind to come and see with their own eyes Ma'bad, her sheep, and the container of milk, that would all testify to the truthfulness of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it is mentioned that these verses reached Makkah. So these verses of poetry reached Makkah, and they echoed so much that people thought that this was some kind of jinn that was instilling words into their ears. And Asma radiallahu anha, because she was still in Makkah at the time, when she came to know about this, she was relieved that Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu were heading for Madinah and they were safe. So this was kind of a news to Asma radiallahu anha and the rest of the family as well. Then it is mentioned that Prophet ﷺ met another man, his name was Abu Buraida. Now Abu Buraida also came with the same intent that he wanted to capture Prophet ﷺ because he wanted to get the reward as well of 100 camels. But when he came close to Prophet ﷺ and he spoke to him, he accepted Islam. Subhanallah. And it is mentioned that he had 70 of his men, so he, along with all his companions, they accepted Islam. And he took off his turban, he tied it around his spear, and he took it as a banner, bearing witness that the angel of security and peace had come to fill the world with justice and fairness. When Prophet ﷺ got close to Medina, he met Zubair radiallahu anhu, Zubair ibn al-Awwam radiallahu anhu, who was coming back from Asham with a trading caravan, and he gifted Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu with two white garments, which they thankfully accepted. And then Prophet ﷺ came close to Medina. And how he entered into Medina and Quba, this is narrated by Urwa bin Zubair, the son of Zubair ibn al-Awwam radiallahu anhu. Urwa bin Zubair rahimahullah, who was a tabi'i. And it says that after Ansar heard that Prophet ﷺ had left Makkah and he was on his way to Medina, so every day they would go out and sit and wait for Prophet ﷺ at Al-Harra. Al-Harra was the area of the volcanic rock, so they would sit at its edge until the sun will become so hot that they had to come back. So they will go every day, sit down there and wait for the Prophet ﷺ, and when this noon time will come, they will come back to their houses. So on one of such days, when they all came back, one of the Jews who was standing on top of his fortress, so he saw some people coming in, and when he realized that these are not the people who are local to Medina, I mean they are coming from outside, they are travelers, then he could not stop himself. So he became so excited as well that he shouted basically on the top of his voice, and he said, "O groups of Arabs, here comes your great man that you have been waiting for." So when Ansar heard, they immediately rushed to their weapons and they all came to greet Prophet ﷺ. They took their weapons because this was like a sign of honor that they are giving honor to Prophet ﷺ, so as to escort him into Quba and then into Medina. And according to Al-Rahiq al-Makhtum, this was the 8th day of Rabi'ul Awwal. So on the 8th of Rabi'ul Awwal, and we said Prophet ﷺ left perhaps on the 1st or 2nd of Rabi'ul Awwal, so he must have spent at least 7 days traveling until he reached Quba. So Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, so Prophet ﷺ then, along with the people, he turned to the right until he reached the district of Banu Amr ibn Auf. We mentioned Banu Amr ibn Auf, that some of the other Sahaba, they were basically residing there as well. So when they reached there, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu stood up to greet the people while Prophet ﷺ was sitting down. And some of the Ansar, it is mentioned in some of the books that some of the Ansar who had not seen the Prophet ﷺ before, they started greeting Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu because they thought that he was Prophet ﷺ. But when the sun became very hot, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu stepped forward to shade Prophet ﷺ with his sheet, and when this happened, then all of those people realized that Prophet ﷺ was sitting down. Now, according to this narration from Urwa bin Zubair, Prophet ﷺ stayed in Bani Amr ibn Auf for 10 nights. While according to other books like Al-Rahiq al-Makhtum, they think that Prophet ﷺ stayed for only 4 days, from Monday to Thursday. And on Friday, Prophet ﷺ left Quba. During this time when Prophet ﷺ was in Quba, he founded the Mosque of Quba and he prayed in it as well. According to Ibn Kathir, Prophet ﷺ stayed in the house of Kulthum bin al-Hadam. Kulthum bin al-Hadam, he stayed in the house of Kulthum bin al-Hadam from Banu Amr ibn Auf, while he would go out and meet other people in the house of Sa'ad bin al-Khaythima. Sa'ad bin al-Khaythima, and it is narrated that he was a bachelor, and his house was called as the house of bachelors. So it was easy for men to gather there and come to the Prophet ﷺ and see him. On Friday, Prophet ﷺ sent for Bani Najjar. Now, Bani Najjar are basically the maternal uncles of Abdul Muttalib. Abdul Muttalib, who was the grandfather of Prophet ﷺ, because he asked them to come and escort him and Abu Bakr into Medina. So it is mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ, when he left Quba, he was surrounded by the chiefs of Ansar in the best of their clothes and attire, and they had their armor with them as well. And again, this was to show honor to Prophet ﷺ. During their procession, they stopped at a place in a valley and they prayed Jum'ah. And according to the books, there were about 100 people with Prophet ﷺ, and everybody wanted Prophet ﷺ to stay with them. So they wanted Prophet ﷺ to go to their house. Well, Prophet ﷺ would courteously and kindly reply that this camel has been commanded by Allah. So he basically pointed to his camel and said that she has been commanded by Allah, meaning that she will take me to the place which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already commanded. So he said, خَلُّوا سَبِيلَهَا فَإِنَّهَا مَأْمُورَةٌ, meaning just leave her, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded her. Wherever it will stop, that will be my place, that will be my abode. So the camel continued until it knelt down at a spot, and that was the spot where the masjid of Prophet ﷺ was later built. So Prophet ﷺ did not dismount, the camel knelt down, and then it stood up again, and then it walked for a few steps, then it came back again, and then it sat at the same spot again, and then Prophet ﷺ said that this will be my abode, this will be the place where I will live. Now, as I said, Banu Najjar are the maternal uncles of Abdul Muttalib. So the great grandmother of Prophet ﷺ, the mother of Abdul Muttalib, she was from Banu Najjar. Her name was Salma binti Amr, and she was the mother of Abdul Muttalib and the wife of Hashim. So Banu Najjar are like the maternal uncles to Prophet ﷺ as well. So when Prophet ﷺ alighted his camel, he said, which of the houses of our family, meaning Banu Najjar, is closest? So Abu Ayyub al-Ansari radiallahu anhu, the famous Abu Ayyub radiallahu anhu, whose actual name was Khalid bin Zayd. Khalid bin Zayd, he came forward radiallahu anhu and said, my house, Ya Rasulullah, is the closest, and here is my house and here is my door. So Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him, go and prepare for us a maqeel. A maqeel is basically a place where you take qailula, I mean you take the rest at the time of noon, basically. So Prophet ﷺ stayed in the house of Abu Ayyub al-Ansari radiallahu anhu until his masjid and the hujurat were built. Now, as for the place of the masjid itself, that belonged to, it is said that the Muslims used to pray there before as well, and they would also dry their dates in that place as well, and it belonged to two orphans, and their names were Sahal and Suhail. Sahal and Suhail ibn Amr. They also belonged to Bani Najjar, and they were under the guardianship of Asad ibn Zurara radiallahu anhu. When Prophet ﷺ's camel stopped at the place, he said that this place inshallah will be an abiding place. And then Prophet ﷺ called the two boys. They wanted to gift the place to Prophet ﷺ, but he said that he will pay the price. So he paid the price for that place, and that's the place where the masjid of Prophet ﷺ was erected. Now, when Prophet ﷺ came to Medina after a few days, other people who were still left in Medina, in Mecca, they also came as well, and these included al-Mu'mineen Sauda radiallahu anha, the daughters of Prophet ﷺ, Fatima radiallahu anha, and Kulthum radiallahu anha. Zainab radiallahu anha could not come because her husband Abil As was still a disbeliever, and she had to stay there until the Battle of Badr. Other people who came were Usama bin Zayd radiallahu anhu, Ayman or Baraka radiallahu anha, and Abdullah bin Abi Bakr radiallahu anhu, along with the rest of the household, which included Aisha radiallahu anha as well. And inshallah we'll stop here today, and next time we'll carry on and we'll go through life in Medina. That will be inshallah not the next week but the week after. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.